What is going on, gunfighters? Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am your host, Michael Melito. Gonna try something new. By God's grace, it'll bear fruit on this podcast. You're probably familiar with the cartridge talks, to better know a cartridge. And inevitably in that I'll compare a cartridge to another cartridge just to give you a rough idea, usually a popular cartridge. But I'm going to try something different, a Showdown. Which one is better? We're going to start off with some heavyweights. The 9.3x62 versus the 35 Whelen. Like Coke versus Pepsi. Domino's versus Pizza Hut. Ford versus Chevy. Dunkin' Donuts coffee versus Dutch Brothers coffee. That one's easy, no contest. It's Dutch Bros. Anyway, you get the idea. We're going to pin these two against each other, compare them soberly. We're going to really compare these cartridges. I'm going to forego the full-length bio and just establish some street cred as it applies to today's topic. So some stuff will get left out. First and foremost, I am a servant of God, and I am humbled and blessed that He uses me. God is number one in my life and in this podcast. He has blessed me to do many things, including Marine Corps combat veteran. Also a veteran of law enforcement, LAPD, been a private contractor, hunted all over this beautiful country since my youth, been a professional big game hunter and guide, state rifle and pistol champion several times over, West Coast regional rifle champion, and very humbled that you tune into the podcast. If you want to support this and the podcast, please consider becoming a patron. Especially this month, there'll be a raffle for all new patrons for this month, giving away an SOG bushcraft knife. It's a really good fixed blade knife. It will be good on a plate carrier or a war belt, or it'll be good for boning out an elk on the side of a mountain. Also giving away a bailout bag, mini bug out bag. You know I'm big on the concept. If you listen to this for any length of time and or Alpha Male podcast. Anyway, that'll be a giveaway for all new patrons for this month. There should be a link to Patreon in the show notes. There'll be pictures and stuff on the Patreon page. I don't want to go on about that. I want to keep it succinct, but check out Patreon. Signing up as a $5 patron will get you entered. I am humbled that you tune in to listen. I really am. And blessed. And I'm especially thankful to all the patrons. There are already patrons and all the many more to come by God's grace. With that, let's get into the day's topic. The 9.3x62. Many may get mad at this episode because some people really love some of these cartridges. They have a pretty devout following, the 9.3x62 and the 35 Whelen. We're going to start off with some facts, and you can reload and skew data and whatever, but I'm going to try and be as honest and sober as I can comparing these two cartridges. I'm going to try and use the same manuals. And to give credit where it's due, I'll be using a few resources. Cartridges of the World, a gift from a patron, thank you. The old trusty Hornady reloading manual may come into this, and use some online resources. I'll try and compare as honestly and fairly. For it is written, you shall do no injustice in judgment in measurements of length, weight, or volume. So let's take a look at these two cartridges. Let's start off with the smaller diameter of the two, the 35 Whelen. The 35 Whelen, it says per Cartridges of the World, came into being in 1987 as a factory option, wildcatted before that. So 1987, it is, put simply, a 30-06 necked up to 35 caliber. Now you might think 35 caliber, that sounds familiar. 9mm is 35 caliber, but hold your horses. 9mm is .355 if you're doing it in inches. 35 Whelen is .358. So a slight difference there. But a 30-06 necked up to .358. And it's got some pretty good hefty ballistics. I'm looking here at a 180 grain at 2700. A 200 grain at 2600. And a 250 grain factory load Remington at 2400. So 250 at 2400. So your bullet weights, you could probably hand load different than this, but common loadings, 180, and really actual common is 200 to 250 grain. And the 250s are going 2400 per a factory load. Again, you'll have variations even based on the weather outside, but let's keep that in mind for a rough number, 250 at 2400. Now let's look at the 9.3 by 62. This was developed way back, I believe, if memory serves correct, in 1905 by a German man named Otto. It's designed for German settlers of Africa. The goal of which being what was already common at the time in 1905, the Mauser bolt-action rifle, a big beefy cartridge would handle African game available in a rifle attainable by the common man. Because you got to remember, the British at this time were hunting with big, expensive double rifles. But this was to be kind of an everyman's farmer settler's rifle, as I understand it, and to be able to handle very large and dangerous game. In 1905, this predates the 30-06. The 30-06 obviously came out in 06. Remember, the 35 Whelen came out in 1987 as a factory option. This came out in 1905. Now, I'm not clear if there was any parent case for this because it's so old. I have never seen one listed. The bolt face and everything seems very similar to the 7x57, commonly known as the 7 Mauser or the 8 Mauser, or what we copied. Yes, we copied the Germans in this, the 30-06. We even got sued for it and I believe lost, because we copied the Germans, not only the rifle, German Mauser, but also their Mauser cartridges to make the 30-06. So it's a very similar parent case to the 06, which shares a commonality with the 35 Whelen. But as far as I know, I can't see an actual parent case listed. Remember, we kind of topped out, and I know there's specialty loadings you can get heavier in a 35 Whelen, but we looked at the 250. This lists a 250 at 2606. So right there, that should tell you it's more powerful. 250 at 26. Remember, the 35 Whelen was 250 at 24. And what seems to be a fairly common loading in the 9.3 by 62, the 286 grain at 2500. So you got a significantly heavier bullet, I would say, still going faster. And for a factory load, I see a 256 grain at 2560 RWS factory load. Some of these loads have a caption beside them that say optimistic. I don't really know what that means. I did not see that in the 35 Whelen. And the 286 grain factory loading by Norma is at 2360. And I see a factory loading for a 293 grain at 2430. So that's a 293 versus a 250 at roughly the same velocity we saw with the 35 Whelen. So those are some real world numbers. So I have to say, looking at it soberly and optimistically, what's the more powerful cartridge? Well, it's the 9.3. What's got the cooler history? Honestly, it really depends on what you think is cool. Some people really like things that are German. Some people really don't like things that are German. But there's no doubt that the 9.3 by 62 is undoubtedly put a lot of animals in the dirt in Africa. Both dangerous game and large plains game. It's got a reputation, and likely deserved. And it's probably been in the hands of many settler and hunter in Africa for a long time. So there is that. Let's talk about ammo selection. I did some research this morning, and I was surprised. I went to Midway USA. I don't get any sponsors or anything. They're just a good company that's I've used throughout the years, and it's a good place for finding guns or ammo or camouflage pattern for something, or basically whatever. Like the knife that I've been giving away on the Patron giveaway came from Midway USA. I don't get any kickback from them or anything, but I just thought that would be a good company. It's a big company. They have a lot of varied selection. And I looked, what were the factory listings for 35 Whelen versus 9.3 by 62, and this surprised me. They were in tie. They were a dead tie. 10 for each. 10 factory options and 10 factory options. And that surprises me. That tells me that, I believe anyway, the 9.3 by 62 is gaining popularity. It's kind of coming back in vogue. They maybe are the fanny pack of the 2020s, right? Thought they were cool back when I was rocking one with a rat tail in the 80s, early 90s. And people are thinking the fanny packs are cool again. Maybe the 9.3 is like that. It's coming back in vogue. don't think that would have been the case 10 years ago, but I could be wrong about that, at least here in America. But I was surprised. They are dead even. There was an equal number of factory loading options for the 35 Whelen and the 9.3 by 62. For factory rifles, again, I used Midway. I want to be fair and consistent. There was one listing for each. A single-shot CVA Scout was available in 35 Whelen. There may have been some other models, but it was all the CVA Scout single-shot. And there was one option, a Tikka, which is not a bad bolt-action rifle, in 9.3 by 62 factory options. You want to go the custom route and rebarrel a rifle or rebore a rifle, you can basically get as many different options as you can get a standard length 30-06 length action bolt action rifle, because you could rebarrel pretty much any of those to either one of these calibers. So that's kind of a fool's errand to go down that road, I think. But for factory options, again, I'm going to say even. I like the factory options in both. It just really depends what you want. And I should say there are quite a few high-end European rifles that are available in the 9.3 by 62. But I'm talking about, as an American, humbled by all the patrons that listen from other countries. I'm talking about here. Can't judge based on a place I don't live, really, and what's available there. But I know here, it's about even for rifles and ammo as far as factory option goes. Let's talk about reloading, because I think if I was going to get either one of these, I would want to get back into reloading. If you don't know, I live semi-nomadically. I wanted to start doing the podcast full-time. I thought, how can I prolong this and still be getting a cut for a while in pay? I looked and said, how can I cut out some expenses? Well, the big one is rent. Cut out rent by living like a nomad. And in that, giving up some things. And one of those things was reloading, because it takes quite a bit of space and infrastructure to reload. But be assured that I have reloaded since my youth, off and on. If I was going to do either one of these cartridges, I think I would want to reload. Either one of them is what I would call a cheap option. So looking at the reloading, here's where, at least in America, I think the 35 Whelen is the clear winner. Number one, it is a 30-06, basically just necked up to 35 caliber. So you literally just can use 30-06 brass. I've heard that you can do the same thing with 9.3. However, I don't know that that's the design. If I was going to do it, I'd probably want the actual 9.3 by 62 cases. I have gone outside reloading parameters before and regretted it. Let's just put it that way. I've severely messed up. Doing that, I would want to do what it was called for. A factory said I could do that, then I would. But if some guy on the internet said you can just use these cases, I don't know that I would. But the 35 Whelen certainly can use 30-06 cases. You don't have to blow them out or anything unless you're doing a 35 Whelen AI Ackley improved. We're not going to go down that road. The brass, I give a nod to the 35 Whelen. Bullet selection, I give a nod to the Whelen. Again, I went to Midway. Remember I said that the 9.3, or if you do that in inches, 0.366. That's a pretty odd diameter bullet. Both 9.3 is not real common here in America, and if you say 0.33 or 0.366 rather, that's not very common either. I did a search on Midway and it came up with 19 results for bullets. Now these are ones you have to load yourself, not preloaded ammo. And I did the same search for .358 diameter bullets, and it showed 100 results. So clearly, in America, for reloading, the nod easily goes to the 35 Whelen. Now, to be fair, not all the bullet selections for the .358 are what I would call appropriate for a 35 Whelen. Some are just straight lead, obviously meant for other calibers. You probably could in a pinch, and they're not made for it, but even so, 100 versus 19. Now let's talk about hunting, because these are primarily hunting cartridges. I don't think anybody's looking at a 35 Whelen or a 9.3 by 62 for home defense. Not that it wouldn't do it, they're just way better tools for the job. So these are hunting cartridges. If you're talking about North America, I'd say they're dead even. I would not have a problem with the right bullet selection, weight, and construction playing any beast on the North American continent, period, with either one of these cartridges. So I say that's dead even. Now, if you talk about Africa, if you want or have aspirations to travel to Africa, I would say that the 9.3 gets the nod. There are several countries, I heard this from multiple sources, that allow the 9.3 an exception to their minimal bore diameter of, let's say, 40 caliber or whatever it is, because it's so effective. And they specifically allow that cartridge. They may not allow the 35 Whelen. So if your dream is to go hunt Africa, you have aspirations to hunt Africa, even to travel and hunt internationally, let's say someplace other than America, Europe, I imagine the 9.3x62 is going to be far more common there. So if, let's say, hunting Oscar Mike, hunting on the move, like hunting other places around the world, then I would give the nod to the 9.3x62. Say hunting here in America, dead even. Hunting in Africa or Europe, the 9.3 is going to get the nod. You are talking about reloading, 35 Whelen is going to get the nod. You're talking about history and power, the 9.3x62 is going to get the nod. Soberly and honestly as I can judge those two cartridges. So there you have it. I'm not going to declare which one is better, but you should look at those criteria and which one is better for you. If you're not going to reload, you can throw that out the window. If you're primarily going to reload, that might sway you one way or another. If you never have any plans to go live out Death in the Long Grass, a great book by the way, and that's not going to matter to you. You look and you judge soberly. Hopefully I've presented the facts unbiasedly and fairly for these two cartridges. With that, I want to say thank you for listening. Again, I am humbled that you give some of your time. Time is a precious resource, and I am humbled that you give me some of yours. And a special thank you to everyone that is a patron and has supported the podcast, and everybody that will in the future. I am humbled that God uses me at all, and I'm humbled to be able to talk to you here today. With that, men, I'm going to give you the tactical verse of the day. These are the words of Jesus. Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. Because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it. Whatever your hunting aspirations and destination dreams are, remember, more importantly, your final destination. One day we'll all appear before the judgment seat. Strive to go the right way. Not because it's easy, because it's right. With that, men, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.